It isn't fair, your age, having to deal with all of this.
So it gets easier when you get older?
No, not really. But still.
Joel? Did you know diarrhea is hereditary?
What?
Yeah. It runs in your genes.
Lovely.
Hey, still alive, you old fucker.
Oh, he loves you.
He's dependent on me. Not the same.
I think it's the same.
It's definitely the same.
There's one story. Sarah died, and I couldn't see the point anymore. Simple as that.
So time heals all wounds, I guess.
It's your first time in a car?
It's like a spaceship.
He's a contractor. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we were cool. Everybody loved contractors. It wasn't time that did it.
The time has finally come to say goodbye to a tried and true character in Joel Miller. A somber event, and one that took the gaming world by storm when it actually happened within the games upon release so many years ago, back in 2020. I think one reason it hits so hard is his whole character's story was bookended from beginning to end, and how the very introduction of his character and the very last few days of his character's existence were very similar in the parallels to each other. See, one consistency we always find with Joel is that he'll always watch out for his own over other people. In the newest episode of the series, we see that in his conflict with letting in more refugees. And cut to the very first episode, in a moment in the game when they're driving and Joel refuses to go ahead and stop on the side of the road to help some people out. There's a lot of arguments to be made on whether this kind of action is the right decision or not, but at the end of the day, this wasn't totally indicative for who Joel was as a character. See, he very much valued and treasured every moment he had with his family. A few facts about him within the game that I personally find very interesting goes as follows. Joel was a Texas native with a not so great childhood and having absent parents. Him and Tommy needing to look out for each other in the end of the day. There's a lot of moments pre-apocalypse that show how much ambition and drive Joel has despite all the circumstances that come up in his life. Like the fact that he never got to attend college because he started a family and had a teen pregnancy. He also was planning to do a startup for business. Him and Tommy's carpentry business was going well, and you could tell he had drive to make it something a little bit bigger. At some point, he even wanted to be a singer. This also builds to the fact that Joel is a character who always keeps pushing.
I struggled for a long time with surviving. And no matter what, you keep finding something to fight for.
Some other examples we see of Joel constantly pushing forward and enduring so much. The fact that he never got to see his daughter grow up despite doing everything he could to keep her safe that day. Alluding to the fact that he preferred to live as opposed to suicide, seeing suicide as a little bit of a harder choice. He ended up seeing a lot of death and carnage while him and Tommy were surviving the apocalypse, at some point them becoming hunters. This is alluded to in the opening ambush scene where Survivor is playing at being wounded, Joel immediately picking up on the tactic as a previous hunter. At some point him and Tommy separated ways, Tommy leaning more towards fighting for the Fireflies and Hope, while Joel continued to utilize his talents as a smuggler and lived within the Boston QZ. See, the amount of trauma between those middle years of Joel's life during the apocalypse really did harden him as a person, and we come into the story when he finally starts to open up with the introduction of Ellie. See, we follow this guy who's lost a lot and closed himself off to almost everything around him, who is slowly coming to terms with something that is a little bit triggering for him. We can see that as he starts to spend more time with Ellie, he begins to think more and more about his time with his lost daughter. And as the audience, we like that he is able to somewhat form a strong relationship again after losing so much and be able to open himself up and be a little more vulnerable. But from Joel's perspective, this is a terrifying experience. See, liking and growing attached to anybody in this world is a risky concept simply because at any moment these people can be taken away from you. Back when society collapsed, it went from fully structured to completely unhinged within the span of a second. And Joel, not realizing what the world actually was becoming, still played by the rules of a normal functioning society and trying to keep Sarah safe. Him seeking aid from a military officer was reasonably the right thing to do in our world. But considering how quickly society collapsed and how quickly people were ready to kill each other, this proves to not be the mindset you should have in this kind of world. That loss very much turned him into a darker person. And even though we reached him at a time where he's sort of coming out of that era of his life, that era of his life still did very much exist. But thankfully, through bonding with Ellie, he learns that there is more to life than holding on to fears and anxieties, and he chooses to hold on to hope. A hope that maybe him and Ellie's relationship will grow, and that he'll be able to have a sort of surrogate daughter in Ellie. The writing's on the wall there, obviously it's not really indicated verbally, but however, after spending years in fight or flight and constantly doing some pretty horrible things to survive, that sort of behavior and mental state doesn't really go away. We then reach the point of Ellie being the cure, and if the Fireflies could have actually made something with her sacrifice. See, Joel made the decision that I'd argue any of us in his shoes would actually make ourselves. In the fact that Joel tried playing by the rules, tried playing by the structure of normal society, and tried playing into hope when he reached for help from that soldier. This resulted in the direct loss of his one and only child, Sarah. And after living so long in a world where it was eat and be eaten and being somebody who had already proven to take innocent lives, Joel doesn't see the Fireflies as this conspiring group that could actually save the world. He sees them as a group of people who are going to bring harm to somebody he loves. So Joel, refusing to give another soldier, another group, the world, or even the universe another chance at taking away someone he loves, he decides to do what he's been doing the last several years since the apocalypse, and something he's kind of done since the very beginning stages of his life. He pushes through and takes care of business. He wanted his daughter safe, so he chooses to fight and kill and do whatever it takes to get her out of there, refusing to lose Ellie like he did with Sarah. This decision wasn't as controversial amongst the gaming community, but the outcomes of this decision certainly are, as we see with tonight's episode. There's a very solid debate to be had about whether Joel did the right thing. And while I may make a video about that decision in and of itself, I personally reside in the fact that personally, in taking care of your own, he did make the right choice. However, morally and universally, he did not. I do think that both Joel and the Fireflies just simply moved way too quickly. Had they both taken the time to come to a reasonable, solid discussion, and even included Ellie in said discussion, they probably could have came to an outcome that would have left everybody happy. Let's go ahead and touch on some stark differences I found between the different interpretations of the character of Joel. He's someone who pile drives through the apocalypse like a bulldozer, simply because any signs of hesitation could lead to him or someone he cares about dying. When it comes to how he carries himself, he's not someone who is an instigator or even relishes in violence. He seems to just have a natural gift for it. And this natural gift does also become an inspiring fact for Ellie, who just wants to be someone who's able to defend herself in this world. This does lead to them having a very different approach to violence, but in general, Joel is someone who is very much in the games like a boulder who the minute you crack them open is actually pretty soft, someone with a cast iron heart of gold. In the show, however, while he does follow a lot of those same narrative beats, there's some stark differences in his aggression. He's not someone who carries himself with a lot of confidence or carries himself with a lot of drive within the show. He very much carries himself like sort of an older person who's aged into a lot of their struggles and is more bitter about the world than anything else. And while he does have moments throughout the show where his rage does boil up to the surface and he happens to go ham a little bit, it's by no means comparable to the way he does carry himself within the games. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, as these are two different interpretations of the character, but I feel it does leave folk easier to choose which interpretation they prefer. However, the one consistent we see within his character is his love for Ellie and his family. Joel is a man whose trauma has left him prepared to make some pretty cruel and hard decisions and whatever it takes to keep everybody he cares about alive, but he's also someone who has a lot of love to give. With the family they're developing at Jackson and everything they're building, you can see that Joel is the kind of person you'd want in your community or within your circle in general. His character flaws really do ground him and make him a little more human, and part of the reason that makes us so sad about what happened in the most recent episodes is that we didn't get to see him keep growing, especially the relationship and bond he had with Ellie. There was no satisfying narrative conclusion to their awkward tension they had built with each other, and after the grand journey they had in season 1, you'd think that their their story deserved somewhat of a happy ending. If Joel was to die, surely it would be with a sacrifice or a grand display of emotion of some kind. But we do have to remember the world that they live in. See, while in the first game we very much follow their story and they are the main characters, just because they're the main characters doesn't mean they're exempt from some of the cruelty of this world. And everyone is the hero in their own personal story. We see in the beginning of the season, Abby and her group are the direct outcome of Joel massacring and killing so many people. And of course it's easy for us to ignore all the death and carnage he brought to that Firefly base because we really didn't know any single person there outside of Marlene. However, narratively, this just indicates to us that every single person that dies within this world does have a story to tell. And whether you prefer that story over others, that just reaches a subjective point. But in my opinion, Ellie and Joel's relationship is some of the best illustrated bonding put to screen I've ever seen. Whether it be just the video game adaptation, which I think really did do it perfectly, or the TV show adaptation, which I'll argue season 1 is still a very good watch. Either way, this is the moment that really did divide the gaming world apart and The Last of Us fandom. So I'm very interested to see how this moment impacts people who maybe didn't know it was exactly coming. How did you feel about it? Emotionally, how are you feeling right now and how are you gonna push through? And for game watchers, how do you think they delivered on the actual scene itself? It was a big scene to follow through on. Either way, let me know in the comments below. Thank you for your support and thank you for watching. And remember, if Joel gives you a guitar, you do not let that sit in the corner and dust.